The answer is not a pile. The answer is a pipeline. And the figure most financial advisors hand you, the one constructed around a pile, is off by anywhere from $300,000 to $1.4 million, depending on your state, your exit age, and one healthcare cost that receives almost zero attention in mainstream retirement content. Over the next 20 minutes, the actual math specific to 2026 will be laid out so you can calculate your real number today. Not a range, not a it depends answer, but an actual monthly target grounded in real data. According to Bureau of Labor Statistics consumer expenditure data, the average American household aged 65 and older spends $61,432 per year, roughly $5,119 per month. That is the baseline. That is not a comfortable retirement. That is average. And average in this context is statistically close to struggling. According to the Pension Rights Center, the median individual income for Americans aged 65 or older is $33,310 per year, a figure well below what most people need to cover basic living and healthcare costs. So the system is producing incomes that fall beneath the spending floor. That is the single most important thing to hold on to throughout this entire video. Here is the commitment. By the end, you will know your specific monthly passive income target, why the standard retirement figure you have been handed consistently underestimates it, and the three-part framework built on data rather than gut feeling that closes the gap. A decade of running a business surrounded by accountants and tax attorneys, along with several $100,000 currently invested, means real skin in this game. The math being walked through here is the math actually used, not the math that feels reassuring. But before the numbers, one mental model needs to be adopted because it will reframe every calculation that follows. Stop thinking about retirement as a pile. Start thinking about it as a pipeline. Every conventional retirement conversation is a pile conversation. How large is your nest egg? Are you on track to hit the $1 million mark? What is your 401k balance? It is all about accumulation, but you do not live in the vault. You live on the drip. You live on what flows through the faucet every single month. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Two people with identical $1 million piles can produce dramatically different monthly income, depending on how they constructed their pipeline. One sleeps soundly, the other is stress testing their grocery budget in year 3. Same pile, different pipes. The entire retirement industry sells you pile math. What will be offered here is pipeline math. Pipeline math is harder to package and market, but it is the only kind that genuinely tells you when you can stop working. Stay with this because in a few minutes, a specific timing problem will be shown. One that has nothing to do with pile size and everything to do with when you retire, that can convert a mathematically adequate retirement into a slow-motion failure within the first 5 years. But first, here's why the pile number everyone is working toward is almost certainly the wrong number. Starting with January 2026, the average retired worker Social Security benefit is $2,071 per month, according to the Social Security Administration. That equals roughly $24,852 per year. Social Security is estimated to replace only about 40% of annual pre-retirement income. So, if you were earning $100,000, Social Security delivers approximately $40,000, and the remaining $60,000 has to come from somewhere else. That gap is your pipeline requirement. For a single person targeting a comfortable, not extravagant, retirement at $70,000 per year, after Social Security covers $24,000, the portfolio needs to generate $46,000 annually. That is $3,833 per month from your pipeline, every month, indefinitely. Now, here is where the math begins to fracture, and where most retirement calculators go conspicuously quiet. You think the spending gap is the problem? But there is actually a specific hidden cost that blows up the gap before the calculator reaches the first withdrawal. Healthcare. Health insurance costs an average of $1,691 per month at age 62 and $1,766 per month at age 64, according to 2026 Value Penguin Marketplace analysis based on a full-price silver plan. That is not a misprint. That is roughly what you pay during your final years before Medicare activates. If you retire before 65 and your income exceeds the subsidy threshold, the enhanced premium tax credits that kept ACA costs manageable from 2021 through 2025 expired at the close of 2025 and were not extended into 2026. The subsidy cliff has returned. If your 2026 household income exceeds 400% of the federal poverty level, approximately $62,600 for a single person, you no longer qualify for premium tax credits. Consider what that means structurally. You retire early. You draw from your portfolio to cover living expenses. That portfolio income registers as taxable income in most cases. And if it pushes you past $62,600, you pay full price for health insurance, which runs nearly $21,000 per year at age 64 per person. Across the 3 years from age 62 through 64, you could pay a combined $62,340 just in health insurance premiums. That is $62,000 of pipeline capacity consumed before you fill a single prescription. And here's where the pipeline metaphor begins to earn its place. You sized your pipe to carry the lifestyle gap of $46,000 per year. You did not size it for the healthcare surge at the front end. The pipe is too narrow for the pressure being applied. And the first 3 years of retirement blow it out before the system ever reaches a steady state. Even after 65, when Medicare activates, the costs do not vanish. Adding a Part D prescription drug plan at roughly $35 per month and a Medigap supplement at $150 to $220 per month brings a typical original Medicare total to roughly $388 to $458 per month, or $4,656 to $5,496 annually. And across an entire retirement, Fidelity's 2025 retiree healthcare cost estimate places the average 65-year-old couple needing approximately $330,000 to cover medical expenses that Medicare does not pay. To have a 90% probability of meeting their healthcare spending needs in retirement, according to a 2026 EBRI report, a man will need to have saved $212,000, and a woman will need $252,000. These figures are not inside your 401k projection. They live in footnotes of documents almost nobody reads. Reading them is the job. So let's update the true pipeline width. You need a comfortable lifestyle gap after Social Security of $3,400 to $4,700 per month. The healthcare gap for pre-Medicare years adds $1,400 to $1,750 per month for 3 years. Then there is healthcare inflation. Healthcare costs for retirees have historically increased at 5% to 7% per year, significantly faster than general CPI inflation, running at 2% to 3%. That means the pipe size for today will need to be wider in 10 years just to purchase the same level of medical care. The honest monthly passive income target for someone retiring before 65 in a median cost state is $5,500 to $7,500 per month. All in. Not a rounded estimate. A range calculated from actual spending data, actual insurance rates, and actual inflation curves for the costs retirees genuinely face. Now, the conversion formula. Monthly passive income target converted to portfolio size. Here is the part that never finds its way into a retirement calculator. Knowing the target and building a system around it are entirely different undertakings. There are people who can recite the 4% rule perfectly, but have never stress-tested their plan against a forced early exit, a damaging sequence of returns, or the insurance gap. The numbers give you the destination. The system is what gets you there without a blowout. After spending the better part of a year working through 50 years of actual retirement data, not Monte Carlo simulations, not backtests corrupted by hindsight bias, but real portfolio histories and documented failure cases, that research was distilled into a framework called the Exit Code. It is a digital book, 8 chapters, no filler, built entirely on data. 3 elements connect directly to what is being covered right now. The first is the $14,000 invisible bill. That is the insurance gap for people retiring between 62 and 65, calculated using post-2025 ACA structures. Almost no pre-retirement planning conversation prices this correctly. The second is the 4% trap. Not that 4% is wrong as a concept, but that applying it as a rigid fixed number without a dynamic withdrawal adjustment mechanism is exactly where sequence of returns risk delivers the most damage. The third is the Social Security bridge strategy, specifically how to delay claiming until age 70 without depleting the portfolio across the gap years, which turns out to be one of the highest return moves available in retirement finance, and also one of the most behaviorally difficult to execute. It is available through the link in the description. It costs less than a single dinner out. Every year spent waiting on this, the math compounds against you. That is not a sales pitch. It is the literal mechanics of compound interest operating in reverse. Now back to the pipeline. The 4% rule. The financial planner who introduced the famous 4% rule in the Journal of Financial Planning in 1994 found that retirees could expect their retirement savings to last at least 3 decades by beginning with a 4% withdrawal and then increasing the dollar amount annually to keep pace with inflation. That conclusion became gospel. The retirement industry built every calculator, every projection, every you are on track conversation around it for the next 30 years. Here is what the research actually says in 2026. In their annual State of Retirement Income Report from December 2025, Morningstar raised their recommended safe withdrawal rate to 3.9% for 2026, up from 3.7% in 2024. The increase reflects higher bond yields of 4% to 5% on treasuries and reasonable equity valuations. For a $1 million portfolio, Morningstar's safe withdrawal rate of 3.9% delivers $39,000 per year in inflation-adjusted income across a 30-year retirement at a 90% success probability. Meanwhile, the originator of the rule has since revised the figure upward, most recently suggesting 4.7% as the worst-case historical safe withdrawal rate, telling a major financial news outlet in 2025 that retirees who adhere to 4% are likely shortchanging themselves a bit of the retirement they actually earned. So one major research firm lands at 3.9%, and the rule's creator sits at 4.7%. The gap between those two figures on a $1 million portfolio is $8,000 per year. On $2 million, that becomes $16,000 per year. These are not rounding discrepancies. These are meaningful differences in pipeline width that compound across a 30-year retirement. But here's the figure nobody is discussing at the dinner table. All of this, the 3.9% to 4.7% range, is calibrated for a 30-year retirement. Retire at 65, pass at 95, 30 years. Fine. For early retirees facing 40 to 50-plus year horizons, 3% to 3.5% remains substantially safer. For a 40-year retirement beginning at age 50 to 55, research supports a safe withdrawal rate of 3.25% to 3.5%. This distinction matters enormously. The difference between 4% and 3.25% on a $2 million portfolio is $15,000 per year. On $3 million, it is $22,500 per year. That is money your pipe simply cannot carry. That is pipeline width you do not have. And the pile did not shrink. Nothing changed except the math used to size the pipe. Here is the moment in this video where you think X is the problem, but actually Y is the problem. You think the problem is accumulation, reaching the pile, hitting the target number, but the real problem, the one that actually determines whether your retirement holds together, is pipeline sizing. What withdrawal rate you apply, how you manage the healthcare gap, how you buffer against sequence risk. Two people with identical piles, one of whom sized the pipeline correctly, and one of whom applied a 30-year withdrawal rule to a 45-year retirement, produce fundamentally different outcomes. The pile is visible and measurable. The pipeline is where every hidden mistake lives. The sequence of return story deserves to be told in concrete terms, because this is the mechanism behind why the pipeline can collapse even when the math looks sound on paper. In 2000 and 2001, the S&P 500 declined 10.1% and 13% respectively. If you had retired into that bear market while withdrawing $50,000 annually from a $1 million portfolio, you would have had $687,927 remaining at the start of 2002. In just 2 years, between market losses and withdrawals, more than $300,000 of base capital had disappeared. The portfolio was $312,000 smaller than where it began, and the total spent on actual living expenses across those 2 years was only $100,000. The other $212,000 was market loss realized in the worst possible window, right at the beginning, when the portfolio was at its largest and the damage to future compounding was at its maximum. The long-term averaging tendency of the stock market provides no protection across a short span of 5 to 10 years, during which sequence of return risk can permanently damage the remainder of a retirement. A poor sequence at the start may cause the savings to run out later, rendering the original safe withdrawal rate no longer safe. Morningstar's 2025 research confirmed that retirees who experienced weak returns in their first 5 years and failed to adjust spending were substantially more likely to deplete their savings entirely. Not eventually poor returns. First 5 years poor returns. The timing window carries more weight than the magnitude of the loss. In pipeline terms, pressure loss at the source is catastrophic. A leak at the beginning of the pipe drains the system before pressure ever stabilizes. A leak 10 years in, when the system has been operating at steady state, is recoverable. Same leak, different timing, completely different result. The practical solution is not complicated. A 1 to 2 year cash cushion held in low-risk assets, money market funds, short-term treasuries, maintained at the point of retirement, means you are never forced to liquidate equity during a down year to cover living expenses. You draw from the cushion. The portfolio recovers. You replenish the cushion in strong years. It is not exciting, but it is the difference between surviving a bad sequence and being permanently damaged by one. Now, a specific real case with actual numbers. Marcus is 47 years old. He earns $120,000 per year and lives in Texas. His current investable assets total $320,000. His target retirement age is 58. His expected monthly expenses in retirement are $7,000. Comfortable but not extravagant. $7,000 per month equals $84,000 annually. Since Marcus is targeting 58, he faces 7 years before Medicare eligibility. During that window, health insurance in Texas at his age will cost approximately $15,000 to $18,000 per year at full price. Using $16,000 as the figure, which is actually conservative given current premium trajectories, his total all-in spending for years 1 through 7 reaches $100,000 per year. Social Security at 58 is zero. He will not claim it. His pipeline must carry $100,000 annually from the portfolio alone for 7 years before anything else activates. For a 40-year retirement beginning at 58, the research-supported withdrawal rate is 3.25% to 3.5%. Using 3.4% as a moderately generous figure, $100,000 divided by 0.034 equals a required portfolio of $2,940,000. Marcus currently holds $320,000 with 11 years to accumulate, at 7% annual returns with consistent contributions, moving from $320,000 to $2,940,000 requires contributing roughly $114,000 per year. That is 95% of his pre-tax income. Not realistic. But here's what the math is actually communicating to Marcus. And this is where pipeline thinking becomes useful rather than discouraging. He has 3 levers, and none of them require earning more money. Lever 1 is timeline. Work until 62, not 58. 4 additional years of contributions combined with 4 more years of compounding. The healthcare gap compresses from 7 years to 3. The required portfolio at 62 drops substantially because Social Security becomes claimable without the maximum penalty. Lever 2 is fee reduction. Moving from an advisor-managed account at 1% to a low-cost total market index fund at 0.05% creates a significant difference. A 1% fee on a $1 million portfolio costs over $500,000 across 30 years when the compounding effect of fees being continuously extracted is fully accounted for. On Marcus's projected trajectory, the fee difference alone adds between $300,000 and $500,000 to his retirement portfolio by the time he exits. Lever 3 is Social Security timing. Workers can claim retirement benefits as early as 62, but the trade-off is a roughly 30% permanent reduction in monthly payments compared to waiting until full retirement age. Every year, Marcus delays claiming past 62 adds approximately 8% per year to his lifetime monthly benefit. Waiting until 67 instead of claiming at 62 increases his monthly check by approximately 75%. The bridge from 62 to 67 is funded by the portfolio, but the lifetime arithmetic of waiting is almost always superior unless health is seriously compromised. Running those three levers together by age 62 with consistent contributions and low-cost investing, Marcus realistically reaches a portfolio of $1,700,000. That is not sufficient. At 3.4% for a full $100,000 annual withdrawal, he would be drawing at nearly 6%. So, in the first 2 to 3 years, he runs a modest consulting arrangement, generating $25,000 to $30,000 per year, not because the plan failed, but because it brings his effective withdrawal rate down to a safe level while the portfolio continues to compound. By 65, Medicare eliminates the insurance burden. By 67, Social Security contributes $28,000 per year. His effective withdrawal rate on the remaining portfolio drops well below 4%. The pipeline is now fully pressurized and sustainable. Marcus's plan works not because the numbers are perfect, but because the 62 exit was stress-tested rather than the pencil-straight 65 scenario. Here is a thread that has been running quietly beneath this entire video, and it matters more than any other single data point. More than half of workers, 58%, retire earlier than originally planned, typically due to circumstances they did not anticipate. According to research from the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies, the median age workers actually stop as 62, 3 years short of the traditional retirement age of 65. The Employee Benefit Research Institute and Greenwald Research found that 46% of Americans who retired last year exited the workforce earlier than originally intended. The forces driving those early departures tell a story that should unsettle anyone who assumes they will have the ability to choose when their working years conclude. Unplanned health conditions and corporate restructuring were the two most powerful factors pushing workers out of their careers ahead of schedule. According to the 2026 EBRI survey, events entirely outside the individual worker's control accounted for 76% of all unplanned early retirements in 2025. According to the 2025 EBRI Retirement Confidence Survey, the median expected retirement age among workers is 65. The median actual retirement age among retirees is 62. That 3-year gap has remained consistent across multiple decades of surveys. Consider what this means structurally. The average American's retirement plan is constructed around a 65 or 67 exit, the one that produces acceptable numbers on paper. The average American's actual exit is 62. They absorb 3 extra years of expenses they did not budget for, lose 3 years of contributions they were counting on, and arrive at the doorstep of Medicare eligibility 3 years too early with no coverage, a smaller portfolio, and a Social Security benefit they may be forced to claim early just to close the income gap. In the 2025 EBRI survey, 75% of workers said they plan to work for pay during retirement. Only 29% of retirees reported actually doing so. The people who planned to work part-time and incorporated that income into their retirement model discovered that the job market for 63-year-olds in their specific field was not what they had anticipated. The plan carried a revenue assumption that reality declined to honor. The pipeline for this person, call them Dave, call them any name, because this is the statistical majority, was sized for the wrong scenario. It was optimized for the best case. And best case in retirement planning is the least useful scenario to build around. Here is where this lands. The pipeline needs to be constructed for the 62 exit, even if the intention is to work until 65. If the plan survives a 62 scenario, you have margin. If it only survives a 67 scenario, you have optimism. Now, the final figure that should prompt you to reconsider every you are on track conversation you have ever participated in. According to a Federal Reserve survey, retirement savings peak at a median of $200,000 for Americans aged 65 to 74. $200,000. At a 3.9% withdrawal rate, that produces $7,800 per year, or $650 per month from the portfolio. Social Security provides an average monthly benefit of $1,976 as of January 2025. Combined, that is $2,626 per month for the median American retiree who actually has savings. Average annual expenditures for households aged 65 and older are $61,432 per year. That equals $5,119 per month in expenses against $2,626 per month in income. The median American retiree is running a structural monthly deficit of approximately $2,500. That is not a worst-case outcome. That is the median, the precise mathematical middle of American retirement. Here is the moment that consistently lands when these numbers are explained in person. Someone listens carefully and says, "Okay, so I am just behind." And the response is, "No, you are building the wrong size pipe for a problem you have not fully calculated yet." The math is not frightening. The math is actually the most clarifying thing available because once you know your real number, once you understand the actual width of pipe required, every financial decision becomes straightforward. Does this action widen the pipe or not? Roth conversion this year, pipe analysis. Low-cost fund versus managed fund, pipe analysis. Claim Social Security at 62 versus 67, pipe analysis with a bridge strategy attached. A brief comedic detour because the tension in this topic tends to build, and a moment of relief always helps. There is a specific conversation that has played out in thousands of financial advisor offices across this country for 30 consecutive years, and it goes approximately like this. Client, am I on track? Advisor, depends on your goals. Client, my goal is to retire. Advisor, right? So at what age? Client, 65. Advisor, excellent. And what income level? Client, enough. And then a pie chart appears and nobody learns anything useful. This is not a criticism of the advisor. The advisor is answering the question being asked. The problem is the client is asking a pile question when the correct question is a pipeline question. Also, your 401k statement shows you are up 14% this year. What it does not show is that the S&P 500 returned 16%. Your expense ratio is 0.87%. Your advisory fee is 1%. Your net gain after fees was closer to 12%. That is 4 percentage points of structural drag applied to every year of compounding you will ever experience in that account. Over 30 years, a seemingly modest 1% annual fee difference can reduce your final portfolio value by 20% to 30%. The statement does not mention this. The statement displays your total balance and a green number. The statement is a marketing document dressed in the clothing of a financial report. Back to the final component of pipeline construction that nobody finds compelling until they actually run the numbers. Fee drag is the silent narrower of pipes, and it compounds against you with the same merciless efficiency that compounding works in your favor when you invest. Consider two identical $1 million portfolios, each earning 7% annually. The difference in portfolio value after 20 years between a zero-fee account and a 1% fee account is approximately $663,000. That is the true cost of the 1% fee. Not $200,000 in total fees paid, but $663,000 once the loss of compounding is fully included.